Emma Stone vanished into her role during Craig Gillespie's 2021 villain origin story, Cruella. I was transfixed by her performance. This whole idea could have fallen apart without a stellar actress on board. Yet somehow the casting director overstuffed this movie with OP talent. It had its downside, sure, like a dependence on origin story tropes. But the brilliant execution in front of and behind the camera far outweighed the bad. The timestamps for every sequence can be found in the comment section for your viewing pleasure. Now, let's begin. We start as always with a focus on our protagonist, specifically their personality, their inner conflict, and their situation. Estella's unexplained yet thematically relevant chimera hair is a constant aggravation, and it gives rise to a bold and decisive and always rebellious persona, which is reflected in her fashion sense and counterculture style. Next, we examine where, why, and how our protagonists exist in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. Her poor childhood is contrasted against the absurd wealth of Hellman Hall, where Estella feels a sense of belonging in a fashion show above her station. And to underscore her shortage of welcome, they release the hounds. Then a brief event happens, one that's never happened before. It's destined to lead all the characters away from their status quo. The Dalmatians push Catherine over a cliff, and Estella witnesses her death, which leads us to examine the effect of that something new to the status quo, specifically what's different now and what remains the same. Estella completes the trip to London that Catherine started, where she finds Horace and Jasper straight out of an Oliver Twist adaptation, and she finds her place among them as a con artist and thief. We move along to the discovery that things are less than ideal, or else we explore how badly things are. Both scenarios are common. Estella designs costumes that widen the crew's profit margin, but the shallow existence of easy money leaves her wanting more. So Jasper pushes her into the fashion world and out of crime. Next, our characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, and this is always narrower in scope than what the third act will demand. Estella tries to break into the industry now that she has her foot in the door, and struggles to separate her previous criminal ways from her new career. Then we run through a brief checklist of the main story elements that we can expect during this journey. Estella's career trajectory in the industry, her irrepressible rebellious streak, her counterculture style and flair, Jasper and Horace, her diligent partners in crime, and of course, the overly pretentious Baroness. Which brings us to the brief event that launches our characters into the wild jungle of the second act. It's also called the oh shit moment. Baroness hires Estella on the spot, placing her in the direct company of the greatest fashion designer in London. Ho shit. We follow our characters as they discover the new rules and expectations of their journey. These are always distinct to the narrative at play. Estella enters the eccentric and tyrannical inner world of the Baroness, where she designs on the fly with brand new resources. She suffers the brutal approval of the fashion queen for the first time, then befriends Artie, her future muse and collaborator. Next, our characters showcase their ability to grow and progress, and this is typically an external or physical beat rather than internal or emotional. Estella witnesses the Baroness in her element, wielding knowledge to dominate the competition, and gets brought in ever closer, where they share comparable instincts. Estella gets an unimpeded peek at internal security, tempting her criminal ways. Then she improves on an idea and receives an actual compliment. Then our characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. Grief and guilt darken the silver lining of Estella's new direction. Then the Baroness paints an upsetting picture about who Catherine really was, and Estella conspires with her boys to steal back the Heirloom necklace. We endure the anxiety as our characters face an escalation of problems and complications. Estella and crew perform their Ocean's 11 style recon work, while Jasper worries about her jeopardizing everything she's earned. Then the crew infiltrates the ball anyway, like a well-oiled machine. Next, our characters evolve internally or emotionally, and they do this by using elements of the plot or story which they've gathered and learned so far. Estella takes her first couple steps back into the dormant Cruella persona, while the crew prove their skills by improvising on the spot. But the necklace is on the Baroness, forcing yet more improv. Then our journey-weary characters come to terms with their ongoing struggles. Moments and elements of the first act are used to gauge their progress. The Dalmatians remember Estella from their Act 1 encounter, who has a private conversation with the Baroness similar to Act 1 Catherine. Then Jasper adopts the Act 1 disguise idea to salvage the plan, and the ball descends into a familiar Act 1 chaos. Estella recalls a repressed detail from that fateful Act 1 night. Then we watch another escape where she flees the Baroness again, Act 1, which results in a brief event that strikes at our protagonist's core conflict. Estella realizes that the Baroness murdered Catherine, and it galvanizes the reawakened Cruella persona, and there's no turning back from here. We receive needed answers alongside our characters, which relate to both their external journeys and their internal conflicts. Cruella kicks off her revenge plan to steal dogs and steal the spotlight, and she fully embraces the new persona, from voice and mannerisms to internal drive, like a Disney Joker. Next, our characters complete their narrow scope objective, yet discover that their victory is shallow or altogether meaningless and must complete a wider scope objective. Cruella creates a division of labor similar to the Baroness, but she endangers the friends who still want to support Estella. She plans to take over the industry from Queen Baroness, but the secret princess origin trope will make her the rightful successor anyway. Then our characters face an existential conflict that wounds their sense of self and identity or their physical journey. Cruella terrorizes the Baroness with photo op stunts and counterculture fashion, who has a private design stolen, possibly ruining the next stunt and exposing her identity. But the Baroness continues to flail about behind the scenes, unable to keep her house in order. We celebrate with our protagonist in light of an undeniable win, which is always related to the rebirth in some way. Estella creates an amazing work of art, a wonder to behold. Then she receives the Baroness's highest compliment yet, the talent for her own label, and her secret identity as Cruella is revealed to be safe and guarded. Next, our characters suffer a grand loss. This is always connected to their newfound inability to quit their journey. The amazing dress appears to be out of Estella's reach. Oh no! Then Jasper and Horace voice their growing worries over who she's turning into, which widens the rift between the childhood partners in crime, and Estella's sabotage pushes the Baroness to new evils. Then we experience a thematic freefall, as the main story elements are ramped up and thrown into upheaval. Cruella upstages the Queen with a full-on fashion show outside. Then the Baroness recognizes Horace, while Jasper regrets ever going along with Estella in the first place. Cruella's reputation skews into actual insanity, and the Baroness leaves her to burn alive, as cold-blooded as her killing of Catherine, which forces us into a brief event that robs our protagonist of seemingly any hope of success. Cruella's death is widely reported by the news. We watch our characters realize that they cannot return to their first act selves, and they turn to face the wider scope objective. John reveals Estella's true identity and his devotion to the Baron and his heir. Then Cruella reconciles with Catherine and fears that Estella was never even real, just an act. Next, our characters use the major swings of the story and their personal journeys to move towards the climax. The constable is still around and proves to be super corrupt. Then Cruella again hijacks a vehicle she can't technically drive, while Wink scurries to the rescue, just as he did with a wallet. Such a good boy. Jasper and Horace join up with Cruella instead of Estella, despite preferring their friend over the monster. And the growing cast of characters gather intel and prepare for the con job. Then the final confrontation plays out between our protagonist and characters against the antagonistic force. The guests arrive dressed as Cruella, disguising the real woman's movements, and the crew traps the security team to provide unimpeded control over the situation. Cruella avoids, for this movie, killing in cold blood, and sets up the final showdown. Then Estella draws the Baroness into a trap, airing their dirt for the world to hear, which culminates in a brief moment where our protagonist finally, and oftentimes metaphorically, overcomes their place in the Act 1 status quo. Estella allows herself to become the Baroness's victim yet again, but she exposes the monster in front of witnesses and the cops. We experience the direct aftermath of the climax. This can give our characters a moment to reflect on the situation, or else wind down the action with a coda. Everyone witnesses the supposed murder, making it impossible to lie or manipulate or threaten her way out of consequences. Then the narration is revealed as Cruella eulogizing Estella. Next, we touch base with additional characters, typically to contrast them against the new status quo. The Baron's fortune returns to the rightful heir, even if the paperwork is kinda dodgy. The Baroness will probably die in jail, whether from age or embarrassment is anyone's guess. Then Cruella buries her old self, leaving Estella and Catherine behind. Then we conclude with a tight focus on our protagonist, specifically to contrast them against how we met them at the opening. Cruella takes over the estate and restyles it Hell Hall, and she keeps her crew by her side, plus Artie, who eventually disappears. Then a mid-credit scene confirms that soon enough she'll start killing and skinning innocent puppies in cold blood. And there you have it. Craig Gillespie's 2021 villain origin story, Cruella, adheres perfectly to the 29-point story structure every step of the way. And it's a testament to how many story cliches you can get away with if the main actor is cast perfectly. Now, let's move on from a familiar villain origin story to a seemingly repeatable villain origin story with my deep dive into backwards storytelling. Join me next time for Christopher Nolan's 2000 psychological thriller, Memento. As always, thank you so much for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and consider commenting on and sharing this video to help the channel find its audience. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk at you next time.